Yo, the largest bank in a $2.3 trillion economy just bought Bitcoin. This $1.5 trillion bank seems to be ignoring what their central bank and government is saying, because this country's government recently tried to double the capital gains tax on Bitcoin from 26% to 46% only a few weeks ago. And then on Christmas Eve, their central bank quietly released a report where they called Bitcoin peer-to-peer transactions, quote, crime as a service. So what country are we talking about? I mean, you guys are going to be excited. We're talking about Italy. That's right. Italy's largest bank just bought Bitcoin. And the party's just getting started. 2025 is just getting started. Anyways, I want to bring up my legendary co-host who's always optimistic, and Brandon from Green Lit Candle, fellow Bitcoin only content creator, joining us in the house today. So anyways, guys, let's jump straight into the article. What are we talking about? I'm sorry, guys, I don't speak Italian, but I'm going to do my best. Let's give it a shot. Intesa Sanpaolo, Italy's largest bank, buys $1 million worth of Bitcoin. It goes on to say, in yet another sign of the growing prominence of the leading cryptocurrency, Intesa Sanpaolo, Italy's largest bank, has purchased $1 million worth of Bitcoin. Indeed, the acquisition was the first of its kind for the financial institution, according to an internal memo. The total 1.03 million purchase netted the bank a total of 11 BTC, according to a Reuters report. Moreover, local news outlets have reported that Intesa Sanpaolo has officially become the first Italian bank to purchase any cryptocurrency directly. It goes on to say, Italy's largest bank buys Bitcoin in groundbreaking move. The cryptocurrency market entered 2025 on the heels of its most important year to date. 1 year ago, the United States approved the first crypto-based ETF that set the asset class on a new trajectory. Just 11 months later, Bitcoin would surge to a six-figure price for the first time in its history. Interestingly, the asset is expected to only continue gaining value this year, with pro-crypto candidate Donald Trump emerging victorious in the 2024 election. Favorable regulation is expected. That's right. We have an interview. We have Gary Gensler's last interview as SEC chair, and it's absolutely hilarious. He goes on Squawk Box, and Joe absolutely destroys him. Anyways, so what's quite interesting about this, again, I think it's a symbolic amount, to be frank, but we all know how we all started buying Bitcoin, including Michael Saylor, right? You know, we all don't have $1 million lying around, right? But for a bank that has 1.5, or I believe the exact figure is 1.4 million euros, assets under management.
Trillion.
Appreciate the correction, Opti. 1 million is like, it's symbolic, right? But we all know how that ends up. All of us, we know this story. You dip your toes into Bitcoin first. You just little toe dip, and then you end up, going 100% plus into the asset very shortly after, once you realize it's the best asset in the world and everything trends to zero compared to Bitcoin. Now, what I was saying in the intro, what is very interesting is the news that was coming out of Italy not that long ago, where the Bank of Italy called Bitcoin peer-to-peer services, quote, crime as a service amidst growing acceptance. So I think there's two converging forces here. There's incentives versus government coercion, right? We always make the case that Bitcoin inevitably is going to win because it has incentives on its side versus fiat currencies that require coercion in order for them to function. Because if people knew that money didn't have to steal from you in order to function, people would obviously choose the money that didn't steal from you. In fact, not only does it not steal from you, it actually gains purchasing power over time. Like, that is the ideal situation to be in. So, it's quite funny how even if the Bank of Italy, the Central Bank of Italy is like, look, this is criminal. A private bank in Italy is like, you know what? Like, number go up, technology good, which is absolutely hilarious. And then, of course, we had the news of the increase in taxes on crypto and Bitcoin. So according to the first article, I remember back in December, it was 46%. It's apparently they reached the consensus, and now it's 33%, but it's still up from 26%. But the justification for why they increased that tax is insane, because their reasoning is basically like, look, there's a lot of adoption, and because there's a lot of adoption, we have to increase the tax rate. Like, they're essentially making the argument that we have to de-incentivize people from choosing Bitcoin. Like, why? That's insanity. And then that leads me to something that we're going to cover on the news section today, which, if you live in Europe, is extremely important. In the United States, we dodged a metaphorical bullet with the election of Donald Trump. I think if Kamala would have gotten elected, it would have been very, very bad for our industry. Opti and I think we would already be in El Salvador at this point, to be perfectly frank. We're going to talk about the MiCA regulations and where I believe they're eventually going to lead, and also Beautyon. Beautyon is the founder and of a company called Azteco, big fan. And I think he had this amazing Twitter thread talking about MiCA. So anyways, very, very bullish news. The largest bank in Italy is officially holding Bitcoin. Another historic win. But after all these historic wins, whether it's strategic Bitcoin adoption on the state level, on the federal level, I mean, like, if we put this in the headline a year and a half ago, this video would have gotten 50,000 views. But now we've just grown so accustomed to us winning. I mean, Trump did promise us this at the Nashville conference. He said, you guys are going to get tired of winning, so much winning. Whether, like, the guy was right, kind of. Like ever since he got elected, the price went to 100K, and all this very positive news is coming out. So, this is great. This is phenomenal. I still think that we have to, be wary and be attentive, because I just don't think they're just going to give over the keys and say, hey, you know what, guys, you found better money. And because you found better money, we're just going to go away. Like, I don't think that's going to be the case. I think just as the disintermediation of information in state was extremely messy, I think the disintermediation of money in state is going to be even messier, because a lot of the funding that government gets comes directly from their ability to print and control money. All right, I want to give a shout out to the 1,057 of you guys watching live between YouTube, Rumble, and X. If you guys are enjoying the YouTube show so far, and the Rumble show, and the X show, make sure to smash that like button. Anyways, I'm going to pass it on to our special guest before I pass it on to my legendary co-host. Brandon, what's your take on this? I'm sure you're going to cover this on your show later. Italy's largest bank just bought Bitcoin. What's your opinion?
I mean, how could you not be bullish? Italy is turning a corner, right? I mean, as you lined out there earlier, Nico, they tried to raise capital gains tax on Bitcoin earlier this year, or I guess last year now. At this point, I'm getting a little convoluted here now, sitting in Colombia, but it seemed like they overcooked their spaghetti a little bit. Somebody snapped it a little bit in their face. But now Donnie Trump is coming in, and he's coming in with a fresh plate of warm cooked chicken cutlets for the guys. So everybody in the chat needs to be throwing up one of these emojis in here, because how can you not be bullish with all this news coming through, where Italy is now turning a corner? I think the one caveat with all of this is that we have to be very cautious with the EU. You lined it out. It seems like they're trying to create that digital euro. So I'm still a little skeptical with a lot of these Italian banks, all these different members in the EU, on just how bullish it is. But like you said, I think it is a sign of what's to come. I think, we're going to see a lot more banks start to come in, see the FOMO, see the price go up, and that's going to bring in everybody. And eventually Bitcoin is inevitable. And I think, the Italians are going to be hot here. The pizza's going to come right out the oven. It's going to be looking really nice and good. And, hey, here we go. We got a bright orange future for not only the U.S. and everybody else involved, but Italy and Europe is slowly going to come around, and that's going to start the FOMO effect. And then we're off to the races here.
Absolutely. I love having content creators on the show. Brandon, everybody, check out his channel, Green Candle It, right? At Green Candle. I thought it was Green Candle Lit because that was
No,
lit.
so I mean,
Green
if you
lit
guys know the
candle.
guys, if you know the guy with the green candle just tagged, tag them for me and tell them to give it to me, because I just put the IT at the end because I didn't know, man. I needed to get it, but on YouTube it's just green candle.
We had to put TV after Simply Bitcoin on Twitter too, because Simply Bitcoin, an inactive account is sitting on it. Anyways,
Yeah.
Opti, what is your professional opinion, extremely professional, extremely optimistic opinion on the Bank of Italy, buying? I mean, dude, like I'm telling you, like it's a big effing deal. This is a big deal. Like this is a big deal. So, Opti, what's your take?
Well, first of all, I would not say it's a professional take here. You know, I don't have a suit on, so I'm not a professional at all. Also, I do want to mention that Brandon might have more energy than me today. So I'm off to up the energy today, apparently. But going into this Italy news, and I'm reading a little bit from the Reuters article that was dropped about this, just to give a little more context for everyone out there. The headline here on Reuters is Italy's Intesa, quote, tests Bitcoin with 1 million euro investment. And personally, the first thought is like, it's crazy that $1 million only buys you 11 Bitcoin at this point. Like that, that blows my mind here. But
That's
going
crazy.
a little further, yeah, it's nuts. Just going further, again, reading from the Reuters article, here's a quote. It says, quote, we won't become a Bitcoin player. This is the CEO. And just going further, he goes, as a wealth management company that has the ambition to become like Swiss rival UBS, we have very sophisticated clients that may ask for this kind of investment, and you can't serve them unless you have a presence in the market. Now, the reason I'm reading that is because we've been saying this for a long time, that, you know, Nico just said it and Brandon was alluding to it as well, that these banks and these corporations, as we'll probably talk about later, they essentially have no choice. They have to bend the knee to Bitcoin, especially a wealth management company, you know, a huge private bank like the largest bank in Italy. You could venture to guess that their clients are asking about quote unquote digital assets. And so this is them just kind of getting their toes in the market, buying, you know, a small $1 million investment in Bitcoin to get themselves 11 Bitcoin so that they can actually kind of give Bitcoin to their clients that want it. And of course, they're going to do something similar that we've seen other banks kind of talk about when they give exposure to Bitcoin, where it has to be high net worth individuals. They have to know the risk, et cetera, et cetera. So this is just an initial test, but we all know what happens when you kind of dip your toes in the Bitcoin market is you eventually start buying more Bitcoin. So this is a huge, huge development. Obviously, as a Bitcoiner, I'm more of like, I don't really care about banks buying Bitcoin, but we know that this is the next course of action here. Remember, we've been playing that Sailor clip for you guys a while, that the three things that needed to happen are actually happening right now. And that was the ETF, it was the FASB ruling, and then Bitcoin, or banks custodying Bitcoin. So we're on the trajectory of essentially a huge development, huge price run up, and all the cards are falling in the right direction. Yes, this is a small investment. Obviously, we don't really want these big, national corporations, international bankers holding Bitcoin, but hey, we can't stop it. And they understand the game that we understand. They understand the stakes. And as Bitcoin price starts to climb, the stakes do get higher for these institutional managers and the people in a position right now that have a lot of capital. So obviously, they are capitulating. They're bending the knee to Bitcoin. And I think this is only going to continue. So very interesting things to see play out. And of course, obviously, like Nico played and ran through, the fact that the Italian government is doing all this crazy stuff to attack Bitcoin, and then one of their biggest banks is like, actually, bro, sorry, our clients want some Bitcoin. We're going to have to buy some Bitcoin. It is what it is. I think this is a forwarding projection of what we're going to see other countries follow and do, especially when we see everything coming out of the EU. Like, I've been very bearish on every European Union country for the past year. They seem to be doing everything in their power to ensure that the population has fun staying poor. Now, hopefully, there is some light at the end of the tunnel. And I know people don't really like Trump too much, but it all got started because Trump won and he came out and said, hey, I am pro Bitcoin. And we'll see what happens on Monday. You know, next Monday, we'll see exactly what happens day one. I'm sure we'll also be following closely on what happens the first 100 days. It's looking like the Trump administration is actively and actually pro-Bitcoin, or rather, you know, pro-crypto here or whatever. But they are taking it very seriously. And this is just going to start to kick the dominoes worldwide. And remember, guys, we say it all the time. Rather, Nico says it all the time. Elections do have consequences. And the way politics works right now, lobbying makes a lot of impact in what happens in the policy and the personnel. And remember, the Bitcoin crypto PAC essentially lobbied a third of the capital that Trump got. So they are taking Bitcoin very seriously. And we're seeing that now every other country has to take Bitcoin very seriously. So again, yesterday we were kind of talking about Zuck and the writing on the wall, etc. The writing is all on the wall right now, everywhere around the world, that you have to take Bitcoin seriously. You can't just relegate it to the internet, call it, you know, what they call it, crime as a service for money launderers. You know, it's only for criminals. It's internet nerd money. Now we are hitting the main stage, and 2025, I think, is going to be a crazy year in announcements of people adopting Bitcoin. And obviously that's good for number go up, but it means that we have to ensure that more people take Bitcoin into custody, don't leave their Bitcoin on exchanges, running nodes. Like I said yesterday, I'm still flabbergasted that 70% of the people that hang out with us don't run a node. So we're going to be harping on you guys for the next couple of weeks. You need to run a node. You need to take Bitcoin into custody because, hey, the third-party institutions, the middlemen, they want some Bitcoin. So don't let them, and don't give it an opportunity to actually take your Bitcoin. You want to hold that in personal custody.
Amen to that. All right, everybody, if you guys are enjoying the show so far, make sure to smash that like button. We just passed 1,500 live viewers across YouTube, Rumble, and X. So again, smash the like button if you guys are enjoying the show. Before we start the show, I do want to give a shout out to Simply Bitcoin's lead sponsor. Guys, Simply Bitcoin would not be possible without our sponsors. So if you guys want to support the show, check out our sponsors. And we're very picky on who we choose to partner with, because we choose to partner with companies that are going to help you reach financial sovereignty. All right, everybody, I want to tell you guys about our lead sponsor, Bitcoin Well, best place to build your automatic self-custody Bitcoin stack. Enable your independence with the fastest and safest way to buy Bitcoin on-chain or via the Lightning Network in Canada or the USA. To get started, you put in your email address. It takes 2 to 5 minutes to get signed up, and bada bing, bada boom, you're ready to buy Bitcoin. What makes Bitcoin Well different is that it's a completely non-custodial platform. So what does that mean? That means that when you buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well, as soon as the funds clear, it goes straight to your self-custody Bitcoin wallet address, which perfectly aligns with the Simply Bitcoin ethos of the separation of money and state. Also, for higher net worth individuals that are looking to buy $50,000 worth of Bitcoin or more, check out their Bitcoin Well Infinite product. It's a Bitcoin OTC desk that is essentially like, if you're tired of dealing with Coinbase UI, you're tired of dealing with support emails that never get back to you, you actually want to have the ability to call a real human being every time you want to buy or sell, or you have any questions or concerns about Bitcoin, you got to go check out Bitcoin Well Infinite. To get started, go to bitcoinwell.com/OTC. Every time you buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well, you earn something called Bitcoin Well points. And you could use those points towards the Bitcoin Wishing Well contest, which we're going to do live for you guys right now. Get your Lightning wallets ready. First person to scan the QR code has won 210 Satoshis. So every time you toss a coin, you're going to win no matter what. But you have an opportunity every time you toss a coin to win up to 1 million Satoshis. If you use promo code SIMPLYBTC, again, SIMPLYBTC, to sign up to bitcoinwell.com today, you get 3 tosses into the Bitcoin Wishing Well. All right, everybody, let's hit the numbers. We have tons to talk about. Let's check it out. I want to tell you guys about our sponsor, Stampseed. Is your Bitcoin in cold storage really secure? Are your seed words really secure? Stampseed's do-it-yourself kit has everything you'll need to hammer your seed words into commercial-grade titanium plates instead of writing them down on paper. Don't do that. Paper sucks. You want to literally stamp your seed into this plate
of titanium. Your words are actually stamped into the metal plate with this hammer. So once your words are in, they aren't going anywhere. No risk of the plate breaking apart and your pieces falling everywhere. Titanium stamp seeds will survive nearly triple the heat produced by a house fire. They are also crush-proof, waterproof, non-corrosive, and most importantly, because this is generational wealth, time-proof. All things that paper is not, allowing you to hodl your Bitcoin for the long haul. I mean, here is the plate that they crushed. They put in water, they put a blowtorch to it, and as you can see, the words have survived. Stamp your seed on Stampseed. And you can use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on their store.
All right, everybody, you want to make it over the finish line with your generational wealth. And that's exactly why you want to store your Bitcoin seed words properly. You don't want to write down your seed words on paper. Paper is prone to water damage, fire damage. You want to stamp your seed into one of the strongest metals on planet Earth, titanium. Use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off. Again, don't write down your seed, stamp it onto titanium. Stampseed.com, promo code SIMPLY. At the time of recording, the Bitcoin price is $96,230. Block height 879,251. Sats per dollar 1,039. Market cap 1.91 trillion. Bitcoin versus gold market cap 10.26%. Percentage issued 94.33%. Decline from all-time high negative 11.1%. Realized monetary inflation 1.08%. Again, continuing to take fiat currencies to absolute school. Anyways, talking about taking people to absolute school, here is Joe Kernan, host of Squawk Box. And he had Gary Gensler on the show. The name of the interview is called The Exit Interview, which I find hilarious. I have no idea why Gary Gensler would agree to it, but I mean, it gives us something to talk about. Let's check out the interview, and then we'll talk about it.
What you think is going to happen, or whether your thinking has evolved. It almost sounded like you wanted to separate Bitcoin from the rest of the industry, and I'm wondering whether you're actually warming to the idea of at least Bitcoin, and whether again people are tweeting you that I said you either stood in the way of an extraordinary industry or were utterly unable to prevent a massive bubble. What do you think the future holds? Do you have a feeling on which it is? Do you think Bitcoin has inherent value and is a store of value? Or do you feel that when we look back on it 10, 15, 20 years from now, it's going to be something from the 18th century with tulips?
Joe, it's hard to predict. I really do like you, because I know that you think I'm going to out you think negatively on many of these altcoins, you, Joe. But right. in terms of Bitcoin, we at the SEC have never said it's a security.
Well, what do you think? You taught at MIT. I think you know. I think you got to have some kind of feeling. You've read the books, Bitcoin Standard.
Yeah. I think that Bitcoin is a highly speculative, volatile asset. But with 7 billion people around the globe, 7 billion people want to trade it, just like we do have gold for 10,000 years. We have Bitcoin. It might be something else in the future as well. Right. These other thousands of projects need to show their use case and show that they actually have fundamentals underlying them, or they won't persist, Joe.
Oh, my God, you own Bitcoin.
That's where the public... That's why the public needs disclosure.
That's what it's. You love it. You love it. You don't like those other coins.
I've never owned any of these, and I've been consistent for 7 or 8 years on this.
Well, now.
Could you imagine talking about Bitcoin for 7 to 8 years, teaching a class on Bitcoin and not owning Bitcoin? I mean, dude, I've been here 9 years. Holy cow. I can't believe it feels weird saying that. And then next year's gonna be 10. The year of the bear market. That's crazy. Anyways, 7 effing years ago, you could have got Bitcoin for a couple $1,000s a coin, dude. I mean, like, and can you imagine that, like, upward volatility? Like, oh my God, I would be bitter too. And again, like, oh, Bitcoin is this highly speculative, highly okay. In 2017, you could have made that argument with a straight face. You can't make that fucking argument. Oh my God, for the first time I've cursed on the show in a really long time. You cannot make that argument anymore. You can't make that argument anymore. Does not fly. Excuse my language, by the way, everybody. But you can't make that argument anymore. You can't. Like, when the largest bank of Italy is buying Bitcoin, right? When BlackRock is buying Bitcoin, when MicroStrategy is buying Bitcoin, when all the tech companies are being pressured by their shareholders to potentially buy Bitcoin, when a nation state has made it legal tender, like, you can't use the 2017 Bitcoin as an index for money laundering. It's a highly speculative. You know what is a terrible asset to hold that is guaranteed to lose purchasing power forever? The dollar. The dollar. The dollar. The dollar is. So yeah, I mean, boring. But you could make a really good argument, because a huge percentage of the Democratic Party tend to be people that are younger, and younger people tend to own Bitcoin and crypto, to be fair. And I don't think it was wise for them to go after the industry, especially if a big part of their demographic owns something related to that industry. I don't think that was a wise move. So yeah, I mean, that's my take on all this. And shout out to Squawk. Opti was the one that pointed this out to me at first, and then now I can't unsee it. Squawk is hardcore Bitcoin maxi. That dude has coins in cold storage right now. I'm telling you, he acts like it. I feel the vibe. I feel the energy coming off of him. Brandon, what do you think, bro? I mean, that feels good. That feels really good. And they even trolled him a little bit. The exit interview, and like Joe is basically saying, like, you're like, dude, you're a moron. What are you doing? So anyways, thank God Trump won. I think it would have been a very rough year, a very rough couple 4 years if Kamala won the presidency. Anyways, Mr. Green Candle, what are your opinions, brother?
Yeah, man. How could you not be bullish? I mean, Joe seems to be on our side at this point. He seems like he's the only one in the traditional media that is extremely bullish on Bitcoin, and seems to be a maxi as well. He's done his homework. He's been very critical of the altcoins. He seems to be diving head first. And thank the Lord that we finally get somebody like Gary Gensler on a traditional media outlet, and he's not given a softball interview. I think that's one of the bigger things to take away from this as well, is that Joe is up there challenging him. Like, come on, man. You've been talking about Bitcoin for 8 years. What are you doing? How do you not get it? You've read the Bitcoin Standard. You're a smart guy. Allegedly, you have a piece of paper from MIT. I mean, what are you doing here? How can you not see the light with Bitcoin at this point? And I think Joe is finally voicing all of our frustrations in the Bitcoin space that we've had for multiple years at a time. And now he's finally coming out and challenging Gary Gensler. I mean, we've barely had any traditional media outlet challenge anybody in power for the past 4 years. But it seems like now that tide is starting to shift. People are starting to question the traditional media outlets more and more. That's why shows like Simply Bitcoin, like my show as well, are becoming more popular, because we've had just Gary Gensler go up there. Oh, like, what's your favorite ice cream here, Joe? What's your favorite ice cream? And when he says vanilla, everybody like claps. Oh, great. Everything's all great. But now they're actually challenging people like Gary Gensler. So people like my parents, who have no idea how to even use YouTube, are going to be seeing this and be like, hey, this Gary Gensler guy seems to be getting really defensive. Why was he making all these mistakes? He's seen Bitcoin, like Nico said, go from like $1,000 a coin to literally 100x, and he doesn't own any. He thinks that it's full of it. I mean, how can you deny the facts at this point? Like you lined out, we got MicroStrategy, the best performing stock in the S&P 500, essentially a Bitcoin holding company. We got Amazon, Microsoft, and Meta all talking about putting Bitcoin on their balance sheet. We've got nation states stacking Bitcoin already, and the United States talking about it. I mean, at this point, how can you not be bullish? And Gary, thank God this guy's getting out of here. Don't let the door kick the tail on the way out. I'm not going to curse like Nico out here. I know this is a kid's show, so I'm not going to take one from the
friendly.
host. But,
it is family friendly. That was the first time I've cursed on Simply for a very long time. I don't know what I just slipped out.
The chat is saying that that's the passion they want from you. So you know, we're trying to be professional here.
Check out the early Simply Bitcoin episodes. I used to go ham. Now I've pulled it back a ton. Anyways, guys, if you guys are enjoying the show so far, make sure to smash that like button. I think we're only at roughly 170 likes or so on YouTube. So smash that like button if you guys are enjoying the show. Opti, I know you're a huge fan of Joe, and I know you're not a big fan of Gary Gensler. So dude, how did he agree to that interview? I don't know where he thought that was a good idea. And they trolled him in the Chiron, the exit interview. Like, dude, rough. Opti.
It's called a Chiron? Wow, big word.
It's a Chiron or lower third, either or.
Yeah, okay. Anyways, off topic. I've been saying it for a while. Joe Kernan is literally the biggest Bitcoin podcaster in the world. You know, all of us don't even come close to Joe Kernan on Squawk Box. He is, I would say, the watermark for Bitcoin podcasters out here. Shouts out to the Bugle because, you know, we all know that there needs to be more Bitcoin podcasters, and Joe Kernan is taking the top spot here. So I love seeing him troll Gary Gensler, though I am kind of pulling back a little bit, Nico. I'm starting to become a fan of Gary Gensler now that he's leaving, you know, the position in SEC. It's starting to sound like, even though he is salty, well, let me back that up. I would also be salty if I was watching Bitcoin for 8 years and seeing it go from what? I don't know when. Yeah, I don't even know what that is. I would be salty if I was Gary Gensler as well, if I taught a class at MIT on Bitcoin. I don't remember when that class started, but I'm guessing he saw Bitcoin go from like $500 to $1,000, you know, roughly around that price range to $100,000. Like, I would be as salty as him, and I would be calling it a bubble as well. And we see the Bitcoin derangement syndrome from a lot of people that are academics and they're in these positions of power. They dig their heels in the sand and they make their positions known, and they actively fight to keep that position even when all the data is proving them wrong. And so, you know, shouts out to Gary Gensler here. Like, hey, if you really believe Bitcoin is trash, well, as the saying goes, you know, it's not nice anymore to say, but have fun staying poor. Also, when you hear that clip, guys, again, I'm reverting back to my hate on Gary Gensler. He's kind of sounding like a Bitcoin maxi. I'm not going to lie. He's saying everything we're saying. Yeah, you know, there's Bitcoin and then there's shitcoins. And none of these, I don't even know how many shitcoins there are now. 10,000, 15,000 of these other coins are trash. You should not be buying them. And, you know, like, being a little less cynical. Hold on. Maybe Gary Gensler was holding back the shitcoin. Maybe he actually did some good here. You know, I'm going to be kind of nice since he's leaving, but obviously I think we can all see that Gary Gensler in actuality wasn't very good for the Bitcoin industry, even though he did teach a course on Bitcoin. But if you watch Bitcoin go 100x, I would be salty as well if I knew everything that we know he knows. So, hey, you know, I guess we could give him some leeway here. I'm going to be nice today, Nico.
The time's up. Okay. So, all right. In regards to the altcoins, right? There's kids in the chat, Opti. We got to be nice. Someone said they're watching with their kids.
This is a professional. This is a dictionary term. This is a dictionary term.
It's a family-friendly show. So this is what I got to say, though. I'm a libertarian at heart. If you want to buy whatever, you know, altcoin under the sun, that's your problem. Obviously, we recommend Bitcoin only for obvious reasons. I mean, the whole show is about that. But I want to specify, Opti, because we can't tell people what to do with their money, bro. They want to buy, you know, steaming pile of garbage. That's
okay, Nico, this is a family-friendly show. The chat is telling us they're watching with their kids.
Yeah,
so we'll keep it clean.
I haven't cursed in a long time, actually, so it kind of slipped out because I was feeling passionate, feeling passionate. Anyways, everybody, stay tuned. We have a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about the MiCA regulations in Europe. And essentially, one of the things I'll preface before we switch over to the news segment. So Opti's ex-girlfriend, Chrissy Lagarde, head of the European Central Bank, when she has this viral video of her calling Bitcoin an escape valve. And then she's like, you know what? It's okay. The MiCA regulations are going to take care of it. So the reason we like to cover these types of topics, and especially in the United States with a favorable regulatory environment with the incoming administration, is beware of the regulations that are dressed up with the idea that, oh, they're here to help you. They're here to protect you. Beware of that. And ask yourself why. And remember, they haven't been really sincere. With Operation Choke Point 2.0, that wasn't something that was happening publicly. That was something that was happening behind the scenes. With the proposed 30% Bitcoin mining tax, the attack on self-custody, Elizabeth Warren using the attack in Israel to eventually spin this narrative that Bitcoin was being used for money laundering and terrorism and whatever. And then it came out to light that essentially the vast majority of illicit finance is done within the traditional financial system. So I just want you guys to be wary of anytime you kind of hear these regulations, they're for your protection. And I'll explain, I'll give another reason as to why. The regulators, part of the government, right, also stand a lot to lose if Bitcoin succeeds. Now, that's not to say that government can't benefit from Bitcoin. I think absolutely. I think it's going to make government better in the long term. However, the current established form of government today, I had to think about that for a second, how to phrase that. And the way that they're financed by the money printer, the more Bitcoin succeeds, the more that's adopted, the more that model is essentially going to be forced to change. That essentially shrinks the size of government inevitably. So anyone who's really benefiting from the money printer is not going to be a fan of Bitcoin. And I think a lot of the motivations between this hostile regulation, that I don't think it's meant to protect the people, it's meant to protect the system. I think they're going to continue down that path. Just as they initially attacked the freedom of speech that was enabled by mass scale peer-to-peer communications, aka social media. Remember we heard a million times, disinformation. No, it wasn't disinformation. You guys said it was disinformation because it was inconvenient to the narrative that was being sold on the public. So, had to preface that a little bit before we talk about MiCA. I'm not saying that, a lot of these politicians, their heart isn't in the right place. I'm saying be wary anytime you hear about regulations and Bitcoin. Because remember, governments think they're going to regulate Bitcoin, but at the end of the day, it's going to be Bitcoin that ends up regulating governments. All right, everybody, let's hit the news. We have tons to talk about.
I want to give a very special shout out to our sponsor, Compass Mining. They make Bitcoin mining accessible to everyone, from beginners to experienced investors. Their turnkey miners gets you online and hashing within 48 hours, making it easier than ever to start your mining journey. Plus, with their active marketplace, you can resell your miner at any time, adding flexibility and value to your investment. Visit their website to access a wealth of resources, learning everything you need to know about Bitcoin mining. Take your first step into the world of Bitcoin mining with confidence. Discover more at compassmining.io. Again, compassmining.io, and see how Compass Mining can power your success. I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Foundation. It's self-custody done right. They built a premium grade hardware wallet called Passport right here in the US, and it integrates seamlessly with their free app called Envoy. Passport is fully open source and verifiable. It's the most intuitive Bitcoin wallet design with a UX reminiscent of a classic feature phone, so you'll know how to navigate it and use it the moment you pick it up. It's also air-gapped, meaning Bitcoin stays offline, never touching an internet connection. It's Bitcoin only, open source verifiable, air-gap security model, gorgeous design craft, premium grade materials. Get your Bitcoin off exchanges and into your own hands in just a few minutes with Passport at foundation.xyz/simply. Get peace of mind.
All right, everybody, here is Opti, and Opti is thriving because he's holding the Passport by Foundation devices. Opti doesn't let someone else hold his Bitcoin. He takes self-custody of his Bitcoin. Guys, if it's not your keys, it's not your cheese. Check out Passport by Foundation devices. Scan the QR code on your screen, and you could use promo code SIMPLY to get a discount. It's a beautiful looking hardware wallet. Look at that, completely open source, easy to use. All right, everybody, let's talk about Opti's ex-girlfriend's revenge. You can make a very good case that central bank digital currencies and the MiCA regulation all come from the root of Opti breaking Chrissy Lagarde's heart. So technically, you can make a very good argument that Opti is responsible for central bank digital currencies. Anyways, in other news, MiCA reshapes crypto regulations in Europe. So goes on to say the European Union's landmark crypto regulation, the Markets in Crypto Assets Framework, took effect on December 30th, 2024. It promises to streamline the industry across all 27 member states. MiCA streamline what? What is there to streamline? MiCA introduces a unified regulatory approach to replace the fragmented national laws that previously governed the sector. The goals include boosting transparency, reducing risk for investors, fostering innovation in an industry often marred by scams and market instability. Under MiCA, crypto token issuers must meet strict disclosure standards. Exchange and wallet providers are required to register with the European Banking Authority. So that's the part that I want to focus on today's episode. I gave a very, very thorough context and preface before we talked about the news, because this is where I actually saved this to drafts the other day. The reason that governments were able to control the narrative before social media is because there was only a handful of legacy media outlets. With the rise of social media came the rise of independent content creators like us, me and Opti, and of course, Brandon on the show today. And essentially, it's allowed the average everyday individual to do this, talk directly to their audience and build an audience. Before, if you wanted to essentially break a news story, you had to go to a handful of legacy media outlets, or you had to go to a handful of TV channels. There wasn't open dialogue and open discourse like there is today. And what we found out with the adoption and rise of popularity of social media, and especially with a lot of things that happened during the pandemic, is that those legacy media outlets don't really feel like they're news outlets. They kind of feel like propaganda outlets, right? And when you question their authority and their facts, they would just, instead of owning it, they would say that you're disinformation and they're essentially the single authority of truth. So governments were essentially able to control because there were these information intermediaries. That same concept applies to money. There are these money intermediaries known as banks. In the Bitcoin community, we have this very famous phrase that a bank account is essentially a 2 of 3 multi-sig where the bank holds a key, the state holds another key, and you hold one key. In the Bitcoin world, this idea of self-custody is a very radical concept. I would say it's such a game-changing, pivotal innovation in human history that it's going to change how societies organize themselves. And we just lived through the disintermediation of information. That lasted like 8 years. It was extremely messy. I think we kind of reached a final chapter when Elon acquired X, and then the X files came out, and then the rise of Rumble, right? The rise of protocols like Nostr. So that's just accelerating, but I feel like we've gone over the bump. We have not gone over the bump of the disintermediation of money and state. I don't think we've even we've started like the very early rise of the bump. That was Operation Choke Point 2.0. But we haven't got into where governments are like, oh my God, like, damn, this thing is really going to change things. We're seeing a little bit of foreshadowing in developing countries. For example, Nigeria, they have a CBDC called the e-Naira, and they rolled it out, and there was very little adoption. In fact, what was being adopted instead was stable coins and Bitcoin. And instead of changing the monetary policy, instead of like, okay, guys, maybe we got to stop printing because people are seeking alternative currencies, they literally arrested one of the executives from Binance that was in the country. And I think the guy's still in jail. So they blamed like the off-ramp rather than take responsibility for them printing too much money, which of course it's a lot easier to do. Like it was that guy, it wasn't us. So anyways, that I had to give all that context before this leads me up to Beautyon's post. Again, big fan of Beautyon. We've had him on multiple times. Akin is the man. Love the guy, and big fan of him as an entrepreneur and what he's been able to build. That being said, he goes on to say, 1, MiCA is not proof of Bitcoin's success. MiCA shows that Bitcoin is a threat, not that it has succeeded in fulfilling the terms of that threat. Bitcoiners who think changing the meaning of words changes reality are not facing reality. Bitcoin is not money. I and it is not freedom technology. Bitcoin is not technology. It is a database, just like a piece of paper with a grid of rectangles. Bitcoiners believing in made-up catchphrases are not facing reality. Decentralization is not a cult. Decentralization and saying that word over and over will not help build tools. Neither will it get Bitcoin into the hands of billions of people who need it. Ignoring problems doesn't make them go away. Neither does repetitive chanting of catchphrases and buzzwords. Politics, and this is something, by the way, that Opti and I got a lot of crap for it, for literally Simply Bitcoin endorsing Trump and RFK, because the Biden administration was extremely hostile towards our industry. It was never about Democrat, Republican. It was never about left or right. It was the fact that they attacked our industry. And as an industry, we were forced to get into the political discussion. Now, what is the definition of politics? The definition of politics is the organization of power. We talk about the disintermediation of money and state. I'm not going to curse, but what is that but not political and politics, right? So this was an inevitability. As Bitcoiners, we've operated in the shadows for a very long time. But when push comes to, like, eventually, just like what happened with social media and traditional media, the rise of social media overtook the use of traditional media, and that's when the misinformation and censorship started happening. I really recommend watching the podcast between Mike Benz and Joe Rogan. One of the things that Mike Benz said was that governments were not prepared for social media. They weren't prepared for millions upon millions of people talking amongst each other and questioning narratives. That was unreasonable a decade ago, right? So anyways, Only delusional people believe that politics is irrelevant. The state has a monopoly on violence and administration of the law, and ignoring this doesn't make the facts disappear. Common to many Bitcoiners is the thinking that doesn't take anything real into account. You can always tell people who will not put their big toe in the water out of fear. They talk the big talk, but then refuse to do anything to spread Bitcoin, even to the extent of recommending a single tool or service. Building tools is important, but direct confrontation with the state is, I don't know if I could say that word, not a good idea. For people who, with no stake in Bitcoin's future, it's easy to remember not doing A or B, much harder for people taking the big risk with their lives. Now, it goes on to say, attacking the centralized paradigm is dogma. Once again, the magic word decentralization that doesn't take reality into account. What these people also fail to grasp is that in order to win, Bitcoin must be delivered at scale. No normal person will use decentralized services. Even if they did, without a means of getting Bitcoin, those services are nothing more than empty virtue signal receptacles. Quote, undermining the ideology of state control is teenage fantasy and nothing more. It goes on to say, what these people could reference if they knew what they were talking about is the proliferation of BitTorrent clients that are all installed by default on Ubuntu. It could be possible that Bitcoin clients could be widely distributed in this way, but these Bitcoiners are all on Windows and do not torrent and know nothing about Linux distros. So it just keeps going. But I think the point here is, the MiCA aspect. And one of the things, again, that concerns me about the MiCA aspect is, and I've been making this case for a long time, and I think this would have been the case eventually in the United States. With MiCA, there's essentially a law that every transaction over 1,000 euros, you must report the name and the address of that person, or the identification of that person, of that money that you're sending to. And you can enforce laws effectively within the traditional financial system. But what happens when the majority of people are holding Bitcoin and they're using Bitcoin peer-to-peer? That's why they came up with the term unhosted wallet. That's where it came from. Because that term is very insidious the way it's phrased. Unhosted wallet. It's trying to make it seem like Bitcoin in self-custody is abnormal, and a hosted wallet, meaning Bitcoin that's on an exchange or Bitcoin that's with a custodian, an intermediary, is the norm. The unhosted is abnormal. So I'm making a prediction here. I think eventually the MiCA is like a foot in the door. And I think eventually what's going to happen is they're going to pass a law in Europe and they're going to say, listen, you can own Bitcoin. We can't stop you from doing that. But because we can't effectively enforce MiCA regulation on unhosted wallets, you got to leave your Bitcoin with a custodian. You got to do that. Sorry, guys. But this is for your safety. And I would make the argument that that's BS. That's for the safety of politicians. That's not safety for the people. Because there's been so many times throughout human history where people did not leave their situation because they couldn't take their wealth with them. And the banks rugged. There was a bank run. They say, hey, can't do this anymore. I mean, our own sponsor, one of our sponsors, Bitcoin Way, sponsored Dante and Rustin's show. Tony, that guy, love the guy. But basically, he's like, look, I've built 2 successful businesses. And then one day I woke up and my money was gone in the bank. It was just gone, disappeared. And they said, sorry, That's happened. That's happened even in the United States in American history. So, like, this idea that somehow taking self-custody is abnormal or is dangerous is not set on historical, pretext or whatever. It is set solely for the benefit of the central bankers and solely for the benefit of the politicians that, to use Christine Lagarde's own words, don't want you to have an escape valve. They don't want you to be able to take money out of the system. They want your money in the system because that's how they control you. So that's my bit. That's my bit on MiCA. That's my bit on where I think this regulatory thing is going. I think we have to be wary of all regulation, and we have to ask who and what the incentive and what the motivations are behind those said quote unquote regulations. I think that as long as a government has a money printer, it's not a government by the people for the people. It's a government by the government for the government. So just want to tell you guys that. I'm going to pass it on to Brandon. I've been rambling on for quite a bit. Brandon, what are your thoughts on this, brother?
Yeah, man, I can't believe Opti just started all of this revolution here by breaking a lizard's heart. I mean, it's a kid's show, so I'm not going to ask how it was dating a lizard, but Opti, you gotta watch what you're doing here with all these people in power. I'm just kidding. But anyway, I agree with you 100%, Nico. I think that rant you went on was beautiful. I think you really have to watch politicians on what they're doing and not necessarily what they're saying. I think I've kind of had this stance for a while that I really think that the US government doesn't necessarily hate Bitcoin. They just are attacking it in a very unique and, in my opinion, if they're trying to attack Bitcoin, a smart way. They want to track every single transaction that you make. They want to know when you send one sat to your friend over here or, buy a cup of coffee so they could tax you on it. And that's the way that they're taxing it. That's why we've seen, non-hosted wallets or whatever they're calling it now, leave the United States because that's, their way of attacking it so they can track it. They want to have KYC. They want to be able to shut down your bank accounts. They want to have that control and that cog. And obviously Bitcoin's opting out of that. And so, I think from politicians just around the globe, they're realizing that this is a revolution that they cannot stop. They're realizing how much power the Bitcoiners have. I mean, you mentioned it earlier in the show, a third of Donald Trump's donations came from the Bitcoin and the crypto industry. And I think at this point, we cannot be denied. So they're going to try to indirectly weasel their way around and try to attack our privacy. And I think that that's their way to attack Bitcoiners, is to use it as almost a Trojan horse to get the normies to say, hey, it's this more private and secure thing. It's used for criminals. But in reality, they just want to know where you send every single sat. They'll have you use it. And then at the end of the year, you'll be slapped with a giant tax bill and you'll have no idea how you got there. So I think that they're just trying to play chess. But the reality is Bitcoiners are smart, and we're going to build tools around it and avoid all these, in my opinion, terrible policies that all these politicians are trying to roll out in the back end.
100%. I think beautifully said from Brandon. Again, guys, go check out his YouTube channel at Green Candle. Great content. Opti, what's your take on this? I mean, dude, you got to apologize to the audience right now for being responsible, for being solely responsible for central bank digital currencies.
Well, I do not believe in regret in life, so I will not actually apologize, but I am moving on from Lizzie Lagarde to Maloney. So, that's my new announcement here. You heard it here first. So talking about the MiCA laws and really kind of piggybacking off what Brandon was saying, we've been seeing this play out in the Bitcoin space, especially in the US. Operation Choke Point 2.0 got completely devastated in 2024. We've seen the attack vectors. Obviously, they can't actually control the Bitcoin network, but they can control the on and off ramps. And this is what we're seeing play out in Europe. And this is why I've been so bearish on the EU in general, is because they seem to be panicking at this point. And of course, bureaucrats are going to bureaucrat. And so they're trying to stop Bitcoin adoption with paper, laws, make it basically almost damn near impossible to follow these laws so that people won't actually use Bitcoin. And I think this is just kind of the last gasp of the dying fiat system. Obviously, this is going to play out for years, maybe even decades, but I don't think that this stuff will actually be here for the long run. I'm even convinced that once they even try to implement this stuff, it's not even going to be any, like, it's all a noise, essentially, is kind of the thinking that I see. Or, as we all know, capital is treated best, or where capital is treated best, that's where money flows. And so it looks like you can't be an entrepreneur in the EU. It looks like you can't be a Bitcoin entrepreneur in the EU, and Bitcoiners and people with capital are looking for other jurisdictions. So as much as they want to bureaucrat out there and make new laws and new regulations and try to fit Bitcoin into the TradFi box, people are just going to either, one, ignore it, or two, move out of their jurisdiction, and there goes their tax cattle out there. So I think this is obviously a bad move for the EU. We are biased here. We are Simply Bitcoin. We think that any country embracing Bitcoin is better, not only for the citizens, but for the nation at large. And so if they want to fight Bitcoin, then they're shooting themselves in the foot, of course, metaphorically here. And I'm obviously super bearish on these laws. I'm super bearish on what's coming out of the EU. I think we are going to see the game theory play out in less than a week, or rather, less than a week. And I think as we see stuff get rolled out, and of course, again, I sound like a broken record on today's show because I'm actually talking about Orange Man on the show, and I know some people don't like it, but we will see what comes out of the US. And if we do get favorable regulation, favorable laws, or rather just slashing all of the unfavorable stuff we've had to go through, I think this is going to fundamentally change the game worldwide. And so these MiCA laws, I don't think are going to stand long term. I think that they're DOA. And so, hey, if they want to try to control Bitcoin, or rather try to control capital, historically, we know where that goes. And now we're in a new era. It's a new paradigm. Bitcoin is here for the 21st century, and it's never going away. You can't put the cat back in the bag. Hold on. Sorry, this cold, this mucus is coming up. And I think they're going to have an uphill battle here. And so, look, I wouldn't be happy if I was in the EU. Nico and I were kind of joking, well, rather almost seriously considering having to leave the US. But I think it's even more detrimental if you're in the EU. If you're a Bitcoiner in the EU right now, I don't know really what's keeping you. You must have some really long roots there, but man, they're fighting Bitcoin at every turn, and it looks like this stuff is finally, actually in place. So it's going to be interesting to see if Bitcoiners and Bitcoin businesses either one leave or actually follow through. Like we saw, the reporting stuff that we saw, supposedly going to come through in the US, and now it's been pushed back. I think something similar might actually happen if it turns out that this is all noise and no one's actually following this stuff, and it actually makes transacting in Bitcoin or even saving in Bitcoin that much harder. And so I think the world, or rather these nation states, are going to have to adopt to a whole new paradigm that is, of course, Bitcoin. Bitcoin and the traditional financial system, they are damn near incompatible here. So have fun bureaucrating, but I think Bitcoin's going to route around this, and of course Bitcoiners will too.
Absolutely. I think that was beautifully said. Now, guys, this is information narrative trench warfare on the battlegrounds of the internet. And again, this is a revolution that is not necessarily kinetic. It is information warfare, right? It's about winning over the hearts and minds of individuals, bridging the gap between the left and the right, and really waking people up to the idea that a lot of society's woes are directly caused by inflation, right? And the way that you do that is content creation, right? That's how you do it. So we have a Bitcoin content creator joining us on the show today, Brandon, and we're going to talk about him, what he does, why he ticks, and his YouTube channel on the culture segment. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, HIVE Digital Technologies. As the first ever public miner, HIVE's been battle tested through every possible market. And as the first with an AI strategy, HIVE continues to redefine the future of sustainable energy. Also, gotta casually drop this in here, HIVE consistently tops the industry in Bitcoin mined per exahash. They're lean and mean, they're green and clean, and they're changing the game. Learn more by following them at Hive Digital Tech or check out their website, hivedigitaltech.com.
All right, everybody. I do want to give a shout out to our sponsor, BitBlockBoom. Guys, this is one of the best Bitcoin conferences of the year. This is the first conference where me and Opti actually met each other in person. You can make a really strong argument that Simply Bitcoin would not be Simply Bitcoin today if it wasn't for the BitBlockBoom conference and Surfer Jim. So, guys, you definitely don't want to miss it. It's April 3rd through the 6th, 2025, the year of the parabola. You definitely don't want to miss this Bitcoin celebration. Now, the prices do go up on the ticket, so you want to get them quickly. The whole Simply Bitcoin crew will be there. Opti, Nico, Dante, Rustin, Jacob, whole crew. It's going to be a great time. Hope to see you guys there. You can use promo code BB21. Again, BBB21 to get $100 off of your ticket. All right, everybody. We have Brandon Green from Green Candle YouTube channel. I believe he's on Twitter as well. He's had some incredible interviews recently, and of course, he's on the content game. We know how hard it is making that quality, consistent content. So I'm going to pass it on to Opti. Opti, very happy with Brandon today.
Yeah, man. And, Brandon was on a couple of weeks ago, so we're going to try not to rehash what we talked about last week or whatever, less than a month ago. And there's been a lot of developments in the last couple of weeks. And so the first thing, actually, I do want to talk about, Brandon, you brought it up earlier in the show, is how bullish you are on businesses adopting Bitcoin. And I've been saying this as well, that I think 2025 is going to be the year where, whether it's the Magnificent Seven or even just the top corporations in the world, I think we're going to get a huge announcement soon. So what's your take on all that stuff? And I know that this is kind of one of the angles that you've been extremely bullish on lately.
Yeah, 100%. Like politicians, I'm always a little skeptical when it comes to big, giant business owners, especially the ones that we've seen in the Magnificent Seven. I know, Opti, you love the lizard people with Lagarde over there, but the other lizard person here is Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, he's going through the biggest rebrand since maybe El Salvador and Bukele has gone through, where he's now popping out the chain. He's got the Gen Z little hair going crazy. He's surfing with the American flag and all that, trying to be cool. But on the flip side of things, I think it's extremely bullish that now Meta is talking about potentially putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet. I know you guys talked about this yesterday, but Mark Zuckerberg has the potential to be maybe bigger than Michael Saylor in the Bitcoin space because of how big Meta is. And he has majority control. I come in with the takes, Nico.
Brandon,
you know I got to bring
Brandon, can you unpack that a little bit? Because I think we kind of glossed over that yesterday. So let's give the numbers for the people here, because that does sound like a big statement.
Yeah, so obviously Meta is in the Magnificent Seven. I don't have the numbers right in front of me of their true market cap, but they've got leaps and bounds more of cash reserves than MicroStrategy has. And theoretically, because they're part of the Magnificent Seven, if they were to copy the Michael Saylor's playbook, they would be able to access a ton more debt and follow the Michael Saylor flywheel and essentially accelerate that adoption. And now Mark Zuckerberg is the only CEO that has a higher market cap than MicroStrategy and Michael Saylor that has majority control and is able to do that. Now, I don't trust this lizard guy one bit, right? I think that he's going to potentially flip and just ride the wave as he did with that suit and the American flag wherever he sees fit. But on the flip side of things, it is extremely bullish that, he's got his goats, Bitcoin and Maxi, that he could potentially be implementing this strategy for Meta shareholders in the near future. And I predict that at least 2 of the Magnificent Seven will implement some sort of Bitcoin strategy here in this next year, with most likely Meta leading the way, and maybe Amazon. I mean, Amazon's voting on this in April, I believe April 13th-ish time. And we've seen Jeff Bezos and his new wife or whatever he's got going on, trying to tan himself on Michael Saylor's yacht. So I think all of this connection here, the billionaire and the corporate FOMO is now about to be off the races. And to be honest, a lot of these guys have more Skrilla Manila, have profited a little bit off this fiat system a little bit better than Michael Saylor in the past. So Saylor's influence to get more influential people could be very drastic here. And I think if you ask the normies, I know a lot of you guys here in the chat are not the normies, right? Everybody in the chat here knows Michael Saylor. But if you go ask your friend down the street who Michael Saylor is, 99% of them have zero clue. But if you ask them who Mark Zuckerberg is, majority of people know. So if they say, hey, Mark Zuckerberg's buying Bitcoin, Elon Musk is buying Bitcoin, all these other people are buying Bitcoin, it adds a little bit more validity. And that starts the FOMO that we've never necessarily seen before. So I think with all this, I know it's a hot take, but Mark Zuckerberg, who knows, man? Maybe he could be a little bit more influential than Michael Saylor, at least this year for the normies.
Man.
I don't think like you could really Michael Saylor's entire influence,
Dude,
but you know, because he's been orange pilling Trump and all of that. But I think he's really getting in the ear with a lot of these influential people.
Put on the air siren because Brandon's trying to cause chaos, trying to get these billionaires to outbid each other in Bitcoin. I mean, dude, I you know, even with Zuck and the amount of money he has and Meta, which is an enormous company, I think it's going to be very difficult for anybody to catch Saylor. Maybe the Bitcoin ETF, but like, because essentially, like, you're just going to make the price go up and it's just going to get more expensive, right? It's going to be like kind of like this like bidding war, in my opinion. But anyways, Opti, what's your take on this? I mean, we were talking a little bit about this yesterday.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Brandon is actually kind of like hitting the nail on the head. There's literally probably only two corporations, whether that's Apple and Meta, I would argue, unless it's like someone in the Middle East, you know, one of these big pension funds or something like that. There's really only two corporations in the US that could pull off something as big as Saylor and actually catch up to Saylor, because we've been talking about this for a while on the show, like this idea, can anyone ever catch up to Saylor's holdings in Bitcoin? And for the most part, you're kind of like no, because they have to have the conviction of a Michael Saylor. But there's really only two companies, in my opinion, that could do that, and that's Apple and Meta, some of the biggest companies in the world. And we did see that clip of Zuck yesterday, or not yesterday, it was over the weekend, of him on Joe Rogan dunking on Apple. So there is this billionaire competition going on. So hey, if Zuck really wants to cement this rebrand, then he has to do exactly what Brandon said. So that would be I forget there's kids here, but a BD move. That would be a huge move here. And man, I'd be waiting for it. So I do want to pivot a little bit, Brandon, unless you want to chime in a little more. I think we hit that topic really, really good.
Let's go to the next one, man. Let's keep hammering it, man. I got a lot of energy.
Going.
Let's go.
I know you're doing great. All right. So next one is a topic we did cover on today's show. It's really, maybe Bitcoiners' not favorite topic here, but it's banks getting into Bitcoin. And I know you wanted to hit on this. This is one of the recent developments. So what's your takes on banks adopting Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, I think banks adopting Bitcoin, it's more of a watch what they do, not what they say. I mean, we've had Jamie Dimon come out here recently and talk about Bitcoin is for drug dealing, it's for sex trafficking, it's for all of the terrible things under the sun. But on the same day, or maybe even a week before, he released a report from JP Morgan saying it's smart to have at least 1% of your portfolio into Bitcoin just because it adds a level of diversification. And so banks have been extremely bearish just in the media. And, I know we talked about Joe Squawk earlier, but all these other interviews for all these high-level bankers are essentially softballs. They're just able to say whatever they want about Bitcoin willy-nilly. And on the flip side of things, they're offering Bitcoin services to their clients. And they've been doing it for years. And JP Morgan even said offering Bitcoin as to their clients is a, quote, gateway drug to the crypto industry. And so I think that bankers are listening to their clients. Their clients want money or want Bitcoin, and they have no choice. But they do understand that, essentially, hey, if your mom leaves this, one of your great sponsors, the stamp seed on their foundation device sitting in their safe and forgets about it for years on end, they're absolutely crushing this guy sitting here at JP Morgan trying to crunch all these numbers, and all he's really doing is buying the S&P 500 for him. So I think at the end of the day, all these people are realizing that they're being bamboozled when it comes to these traditional financial people telling them, hey, listen to me. I'm this big banker. I'm big and smart. I'll come in with a suit and I could tell you what's going to be the best use of your money, when in reality, it's been Bitcoin, and it's been Bitcoin for 15 years. That answer has been plain and simple. And finally, the bankers are starting to see it. So they're trying to sway everybody in the media. But in reality, they're realizing, hey, like there's no stopping it. If we tell our clients no Bitcoin whatsoever, we're going to lose all of them. So I think they're slowly going to start coming to them. And eventually, all of their clients are going to get smart and hold it in self-custody. But that time is coming soon.
Well, we did see that with the Vanguard CEO. I forget what his last name. Tim Scott, maybe. I forget his name. But we literally saw this play out already, and we're going to see more of this, I think, in 2025. And I think that's the writing on the wall. You're 100% right on that. Like, they're going to capitulate, and they're going to capitulate hard. Obviously, they're still doing the billionaire FUD playbook, which we constantly cover on this show. So next topic. Spicy take, but me and Luke were talking about this the other day, and we have the same view as you do. I know you're down there in Medellin with Luke, so maybe this is just your intel going through Luke to us, and we agreed on the same topic. But this idea of basically like nation state adoption announcement fatigue until something materializes, it seems like nothing burger. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, man, I think we're definitely getting to that point. I mean, it's like the breaking and the announcement of the potential of an announcement. Everybody's getting in on it, right? I mean, there's 25 countries talking about it. I'm about that action, boss. So let's see it, man. Let's see something happen. Until something happens, I don't want to hear about it anymore. I mean, of course it's bullish going forward. And hey, the fact that I'm even saying this, I feel spoiled as a Bitcoiner, being fatigued from hearing about too many nation states wanting to adopt Bitcoin. Hell, we beat all of them, guys. So, I mean, at this point, it's like, all right, well, we're well in front. We're waiting. We're turning around, waiting for all you guys to catch up. So, yeah, Opti, I'm sure you, me, and my friend Luke with the lesbian haircut are all agreeing on all of this here.
Yo, hold on. Oh, hot take. Love it.
That comment did not come from Simply.
Oh, that's funny. Oh, man. Okay,
it's a kid show, so I had to keep it a little PG.
That's great. Okay, all right. Next topic, and then maybe we'll do a little free flowing at the end. You know, at Simply Bitcoin, we do our best to avoid price speculation, but we are not against our guests doing some price speculations here. And I know this is obviously something everyone's talking about. This is something you wanted to talk about. It's something that you could rant on for a little bit. So I guess here on Simply Bitcoin, I'm going to ask you, Brandon, what is your price predictions for 2025 and beyond?
Hey, man, I've been hinting at it this entire time. I'm extremely bullish, but I'm waiting to see that action, boss. So I think with all of these, the FASB, I think that's going to be monumental. We're going to see multiple companies put Bitcoin on the balance sheet. Hell, even JP Morgan, they said they're looking and evaluating companies that hodl Bitcoin differently, actually holding them as carrying them as a multiplier effect, seeing that Bitcoin on the balance sheet as an extreme positive. So I think we're going to see at least a couple of the Magnificent Seven put Bitcoin on the balance sheet, maybe a couple nation states. But even if that doesn't happen, I think we're going to see Trump really put pressure on Powell to lower interest rates. And we'll see at a base case, $250K for Bitcoin. But with all this FOMO that we're talking about here, Opti, I don't think $1 million a coin this year is out of question because of everything that we're seeing sitting on the sidelines. Trillions and trillions of dollars just waiting to buy Bitcoin. And we're going to be off to the races here shortly, folks. So buckle up, because I think 2025, like we say every cycle, is going to be different.
Let's go. Hey, shout out to Dr. Jack Cruz. Bitcoin is going higher, and that's all we need. Bars. Let's go. Let's
Dr.
go.
Jack in the chat. Man, I have my blue blocking glasses. Dr. Jack would be so proud.
Hold on, Nico.
I'm wearing them every single night, Dr. Jack.
Nico, right. You literally say that every time Dr. Jack is in the chat, and you're never wearing them. So
I wear them. I wear them.
I don't know.
You're
LARPing. You're LARPing.
Listen, when the sun goes down, they're on. They're on my face. Okay. So that blue light is evil. It's bad.
Yeah, and shouts out to Dr. Jack Cruz' recent appearance on Breedlove's channel. We here at Simply Bitcoin, literally our whole team was like, we all have to watch this. So pressing that to everyone, go watch it as well. Anyways, back to Brandon. Brandon, I hit all the topics we wanted to talk about, but I'm sure you're fired up. So I don't know, you want to do one last rant for the audience out here? What's the last message you want to hit on? Or rather, you can go on another rant and then do a TLDR. I don't know, whatever you want to take this.
I don't know. I was cutting out. I got this terrible Colombian internet here. Maybe Luke's over there trying to hide all my bandwidth. But, the last final message that I got for you guys is, hey, we are on the brink of potentially the biggest year in Bitcoin with all the things that we've been talking about here. The Italians to start the beginning. We got a lot of pasta cooking up here, and I'm extremely bullish on everything going forward. So, hey, smash the like button for my boys over at Simply. Smash the subscribe button. Tell a friend to join in on the next chat. And boys, thank you so much for having me on.
Appreciate you joining us. Appreciate you joining
energy,
us,
bro. Good energy today.
Edgy with the language, but none of that language came from Simply. Just want to tell YouTube. But I appreciate Brandon joining us today, guys. This is January.
Wait, Nico. Let's give Brandon a chance to plug all his socials for the people because they're asking about it in the chat.
Yeah.
Did you hear us, Brandon? Plug your socials. Are we losing him?
My bad, boss. I'm at Green Candle IT. Like I said a little earlier, if you know the guy that's got the green candle, tell him and kick him in the chest for me so I can get him. And Green Candle on YouTube. So the kids show. So not quite the Spartan kick in the chest. I'll just give him a little love tap.
If you guys enjoyed today's show, make hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Today is January 14, 2024. This is Simply Bitcoin Live. I'm your host, Nico. This is my legendary co-host, Optimus Fields, and our guest today, Brandon from Green Lit Candle. We're Simply Bitcoin Live, and we'll be back tomorrow for a brand new episode.
Today's episode was brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.